If you care at all about your career as a business analyst, then you can't afford to ignore the job market. And that's why I'm so happy to have Dean Kulaweera back on the show with us, because he is the job market extraordinaire. He understands it inside out. He's here to help us understand what the current state of the job market is. Thank you for joining us again, Dean.
Hey, no worries, Amal. I always have fun speaking with you, and I had a great time last time we spoke, and I'm just glad to be back. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah. Great to have you here. And I'm excited to dive into the details, because when we spoke the last time a couple of months ago, and we're thinking it was about 7 or 8 months ago, that was really just a couple of months after the pandemic had kind of started off. And we talked a lot about some of the major trends and challenges that have been going on. And what I'd really like to do is maybe just kind of start off there to get your sense of how some of the things have changed since the last time we talked in the job market for business analysts and other IT professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. And great question. I think that's a great question to kick off the conversation, Amal. So, I mean, last time we spoke, it was, I believe it was like right at the onset of the pandemic, or at least very early on. So since then, what has changed is that organizations have since then obviously adapted to the changes for the most part, right? Because I don't want to generalize because, digital transformations and, all these adaptations don't take place, overnight. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, organizations have adapted. And, whereas before the major concern was, hey, how do we stay in operation right now, with the stay at home work orders and all that stuff. Whereas now the atmosphere is more so, okay, obviously things are different. We've adapted. We've got the tech in place to operate remotely. Now, how do we continue to run our operations, or how do we continue to grow the business? So in that sense, that's what has changed for most organizations. Mm-hmm. And now the focus is more so back on recruiting, right? So that's why, you'll notice a lot of, new jobs opening up, and, companies are focusing back again on recruiting. And now the other change is that there are obviously at this point clear distinctions between industries that were not doing really well, that have been adversely affected by the pandemic, versus those industries that are clearly doing, really well and really prospering during the current environment. There's obviously, of course, a new adaptation to the newer environment, the new way of things that are influenced by, changing consumer demands, and that has affected businesses, where businesses are focusing their investments and where they're looking at in terms of what's going on in the marketplace. Yeah. And also, the major thing is increased competition, right? There's definitely increased competition. There's more people available, versus, fewer opportunities out there. So some things have stayed the same, some things have changed, but, I would say overall, that's probably what's different at this point.
Yeah. And I remember the last time we talked, just on your point there about certain industries that have been affected more, right? I think last time we talked, we said that retail is probably one of the places where you're going to see a lot of decrease in demand for business analysis skills. And just based on the trends that are going on, is that still the case, or have been any other kind of shifts there, like kind of industry or sector-wise, I guess?
Yeah. So in regards to retail, when we last spoke, they were just hammered, right, because of this whole thing. Yeah. But the interesting thing, Amal, is that, and this is again proof of that this concept of, hey, whoever is most quickest to adapt will thrive and survive. Yeah. I think you can clearly see that in the retail space. There's definitely retailers that are suffering, that might be even still struggling, but you'll also notice those retailers who are most quick to adapt and change and go full on e-commerce. Yeah. Those ones are actually doing really, really well, actually. Yeah. And they've adapted, they understand that the environment's different. They've adapted, and there are retailers doing really well. So I would say, again, and I can't remember the exact phrase. I can't remember who said it, but whoever is quickest to adapt to whatever the changes are in the new environment, those are the ones that will continue to thrive and be successful. And I think in retail, you'll definitely see that.
Yeah, and that's a really good saying, because I think it's true for retailers, but it's true for everybody in general, right? Because as an analyst, when you're a big part of your world changes, we talked about this last time, a big part of your world changes, you as an analyst now need to completely reframe the way that you're looking at things and start to make some changes in the way that you kind of run your own career a lot of times, right? In the way that you do your job search. And so that's a really important point to make sure that everybody kind of takes home, to say that anytime when there's a major shift like this is something that you always want to make sure that you're always adapting to. there are typically two types of personalities out there, right? They're like the type of people who like to kind of just land themselves into a role and then they forget about job searches altogether for they think the rest of their lives. There are other types of people who like to kind of move from place to place. And would you say that there's an increase in the in opportunities that are available to people who are kind of the second type of person versus the first type of person?
Yeah, sure. So, when the pandemic first occurred, something that I noticed as a recruiter was even those companies that were hiring, because of the level of uncertainty, right,
Mhm.
so to speak, in terms of how long this is going to go out and all that stuff, many organizations were looking to take people on a contract basis, on a short-term contract basis, and kind of just see how things play out. So I think that's still evident. I mean, I think there's still companies that are looking, that might be a little uncertain. They're not sure how this is going to play out. They're not sure how long, the long-term lasting effects of this thing is. So there definitely are opportunities for people that prefer to move from project to project, contract to contract. There's opportunities for those people.
Mhm.
And at the same time, there are full-time opportunities as well. And I think what the individual has to look at as a BA, and I know most of your audience are business analysts, is you got to look at your industry, right? What industry you're in, like what kind of projects are you focusing on? And within that space, are they looking for someone to stay on for a long period of time? Or are these for projects that there is an ability for them to go on a contract basis? So I guess it depends on the types of projects as well.
Got it. Got it. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the folks that may be struggling a little bit in the job market today to try to land the role. I know that in the past we've talked a little bit about how really the job market itself is really its own entity, and as such, it kind of has its own process that people need to follow to be able to land a job. Can you kind of give us another quick overview of what the stages are of somebody trying to land a role, and maybe kind of talk to us a little bit about where you're seeing people's process kind of break down, like what stage of the job search process are they starting to break down?
Yeah, sure thing. So earlier this year, Imal, I'm starting to do this every quarter, but earlier this year, around January, I released this LinkedIn poll where I asked job seekers, hey, what are the greatest challenges you're facing in your job search? And so I had like 4 possible options, right? The number one was, applying for jobs, not getting any responses. Number 2 was, struggling at the interview stages. Number 3 was salary negotiations and offers, and number 4 was others. So anything else.
Yeah.
And so in this poll, around 429 people voted, and 77% said that their greatest challenge is applying for jobs and not getting any responses.
Yeah.
So it was like a landslide vote there. And number 2 was the interview stage stuff.
Yeah.
But even then, that was like minuscule compared to 77% of job seekers experiencing that their major challenge.
Yeah.
So I think the major challenge, going to your question, the major challenge people are facing, I think, Amal, is solely and purely depending on applying for jobs online and taking a very passive approach, right? People are applying, they're sending out their resume, they're sending out their applications, and at no fault of their own, by the way. Like, this is how we've been doing things. I mean, most of us have been doing things since forever, right? But given the high levels of competition now, what I'm seeing is that these passive ways of searching for jobs are leaving a lot of people in the dust.
Right.
And it's just and on a recent live stream of mine, I remember a software development hiring manager joining in the stream and saying, hey, we posted a job and we got 600 applications in.
Wow.
Right. And it's virtually impossible for a hiring manager to go through 600 applications. It's just not going to happen because most hiring managers, their primary function is not recruitment anyway. Right. They got their own stuff to deal with. Same thing if you're in business analysis. Right. So the main thing here is what job seekers need to be doing is looking at what multiple avenues can I use to proactively put myself in front of the right people.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm not saying don't apply for jobs. I'm not saying don't submit your resume. What I'm saying is what everyone needs to look at is what can we do beyond simply hitting submit or simply hitting send.
Right.
So this is where, again, Imal, networking, building a well-known brand for yourself, professional brand for yourself, taking those proactive steps and reaching out to people, recruiters, HR people, even decision makers at companies, where you can get yourself in front of these people and make them aware that you exist. Because no matter how great your resume is, like it's very difficult for your resume to stand out when you're in a pile of like 600 other applications.
Right, right,
So
right.
so the job seeker needs to look at what multiple avenues can I use to get myself in front of the right people.
Yeah, and really has to be kind of like a full-time job in some ways, looking
Oh yeah,
for a
totally.
job, right? And so it takes
Absolutely.
quite a bit of effort. And so I guess it seems like there is a lot more competition for these types of jobs. And really, for many people who have been searching for a long time, I don't want them to feel like, a lot of times, you know, when you get into a rut, you can start to feel like it's kind of like your own fault. And by no means should anybody really feel that way, right? The
Yeah,
circumstances
yeah,
are what they are, and a lot of that stuff isn't really any specific person's fault. It's just that you know, market conditions basically dictate how many jobs are available and who's going to be landing in those jobs. And so some of the tips you're talking about are some of the ways that you can kind of increase your own chances in getting into, but by no means should you ever let yourself fall into a rut and think that a lot of this stuff is your fault. We recently had a member who in our community who had been searching for a job for multiple months, and I was really astounded by the level of perseverance that I saw in this member, because they were coming back day after day, asking question after question after question, relentlessly, right?
yeah,
And to me, that is such an impressive way of handling your job search
yeah,
process. Because again, even anybody, right, can fall into a place where they're saying, hey, look, maybe this isn't worth it, and I don't want to work towards it. But with this member, what we saw is continued month after month after month, just kept on coming back, question very intelligent questions, one after the other. They somehow found it within themselves to continue pursuing this
yeah,
as much as they possibly could. Sometimes I don't even know where that kind of willpower comes from,
yeah, yeah.
but they kept with it, and they recently finally just landed a position, and it you know, everything, their entire world just completely changed. So
Awesome.
that I think is a message that regardless of where you're at and how long you've been out of work, it's something that you really have to kind of make sure that you don't feel like it's your fault, and that it's something that is just usually dictated by market conditions. What you have to do is, from the way I see it, is that, you know, you find some way to muster up that level of motivation and to continue just going towards it until something works out, because in the long run, something eventually does work out. Number two, again, is you know, as Dean is saying, is that there are things that have significantly changed the landscape of how job searching and landing a job works. And so now you have to really start to adapt to whatever those new conditions are, to make sure that you're starting to kind of to adapt and to get yourself into the place that you need to. So I just wanted to kind of get that part of it out, because it's just kind of been sitting in the back of my mind, because I
Yeah.
can see that there's a lot of folks out there who are just going at it day after day, and I just want to encourage people to continue doing that, to you know, and to not give up on their hopes. So
Yeah, if I could add to that, Imal, as well, because I think this is so important, right? Because hey, I mean, look, when you're applying for jobs, you're putting yourself out there, you're putting in the work, you have such great knowledge, experience, and value you bring to the table, and you're not getting any responses, or you're not getting where you want to be. It's very easy to fall into that rut. So I totally agree.
yeah,
And something I always tell people is, hey, don't focus on those things that are beyond your control, right? Just like you said, Imal. I mean, this whole situation going on in the marketplace, it's not your fault,
right,
right? And what I want my message to those of you watching is, don't focus on those things beyond your control. Instead, put the focus on things you do have control over, right? You got control over your knowledge. You got control over, hopping onto BA blocks and watching some videos, right?
mm-hmm.
Expanding your knowledge, increasing your expertise here, and making those investments. You got control over your resume, your interviewing skills, all that stuff. So put the focus on what you do have control over.
Yeah.
You start panicking and you start getting anxiety when you start looking at those things that are beyond your control.
Yeah. Excellent advice. Excellent advice. Now, if you were to maybe pick out one thing that you think that you see a lot of job seekers doing wrong right now, is there one really big thing that kind of sticks out to you that we could talk about?
Yeah. So if there's one thing I could pick, Imal, and I kind of alluded to it before, but the mistake a lot of job seekers make is thinking that having an amazing, fantastic resume is all that it takes.
Right.
Now, the resume is definitely very important. But again, like I said, because of the current environment we're in, with the high levels of competition for people competing over the same jobs, we have to start looking beyond simply the resume, right? So this is where, and for homework, those of you watching, like, I want you to take out a sheet of paper and list out what can I do beyond hitting submit? And because I don't want any of you folks watching to simply be passively waiting for a response, right? So I want you to looking at things proactively. So what is it you can do? Is can you do more networking? Can you attend some more virtual events for your industry? Can you send out some messages? Can you make some phone calls to some agency recruiters that you might know? Whatever it is, start listing out things that you can do beyond the resume, simply hitting that submit button. Because I think that's the biggest mistake so many people are making. And the kind of the proof of that is just in that survey I put out back in January, right? I mean, 77% of the 429 people who voted said not getting responses when they apply is the biggest challenge. So look beyond simply hitting submit.
Got it. I was just perusing around your website the other day, dkglobaltalent.com, and I saw that you finally have I saw that you had a course there, and
Yes,
I'm wondering if you could maybe kind of tell folks a little bit about what that course is and who it's for and how it can help folks.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that, Imal. So I recently released a course. It's called Applying to Jobs Online 101.
Yeah.
The 3-step process for getting responses from hiring teams. So this course, the reason I built it out was I was inspired obviously by this poll, by this survey where, I was just shocked when I saw that 77% of job seekers out there, they're not even getting beyond the application stage, like applying for jobs.
Right.
So going by my philosophy of taking proactive steps, what I teach in the course is how to get yourself in front of those people through the use of direct messaging. So this is where my 3-step process is basically step number 1, identify and apply for the opportunities which interest you.
Right.
Step number 2 is direct message. So identifying the decision makers, the hiring managers, and sending them out direct messages. And step number 3 is following up. So we don't want to depend on only one attempt at making contact. We got to be following up. So in my course, I pretty much break down, the most effective way to, structure your messaging, structuring your follow-up. So you get that increase in responses from applications, for the applications and for the jobs you're applying for. But yeah, I appreciate you letting me talk about that, Imal. You can check it out at dkglobaltalent.com.
Yeah. And I'll leave the links to your profile and your website and everything else down below. So for anybody who is having trouble, again, like I always like to say to our members, and like we talked about the last time we spoke, to me, job searching skills is like another skill set, right? It's not like it's one of these things that tends to fall by the wayside, because once somebody lands a job, they think, okay, well, I'm here forever, and you can get a little bit apathetic. And with any skill set, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? I have that in my business analysis skills. I like to take on contracts every once in a while just to make sure I'm kind of not losing my skills there.
Yeah.
But to me, job searching skills, it's the exact same thing, right? And I like the fact that you've really just kind of broken it down into a process that way, and you can kind of help people identify exactly where in that process their initiative is kind of breaking down, and help them try to figure it out. It almost feels like the type of thing I would do for a client when they're running any other kind of process, right? Map it out, and where are things going wrong. Let's focus on that piece of it. So it's awesome that something like this even exists. So I'll leave the links for everybody down below. Check it out. The other thing that you should always make sure you're doing is that you connect with Dean, because again, anytime Dean goes live, I get the notification, and unless my house is burning down or something else is going on, I always try to show up, because there's always so much good knowledge that's in these sessions. So make sure you're connecting with Dean, and make sure you're following him on LinkedIn, but I'll leave all of the rest of the links below for everybody to connect. Thanks again for joining us, Dean.
Thanks so much, Imal. I really appreciate it. And thanks, everyone.
All right. We'll talk again soon.